The championship games are over, and we're going to get into our final power rankings, sort of. What's up, War Report family? We're back with another great edition of the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. I'm your host, Mike G, and joining me as he does from time to time is my guy, Chris Phillips from SEC Unfiltered, to talk about his SEC power rankings. SEC championship is over. Obviously, we're getting ready to head into week one of the first 12-team college football playoff. But you were on vacation, and we're going back in time to talk about these power rankings. Chris, before we get into this, man, how goes it? How was your time away?
I was about to say, Mike, I take 1 week off, and you say I come on here time to time like we didn't do this every single week of the season. What's going on, man? It's a pleasure. Last week was great. For those who don't know, I took some time away, went skiing for the week, Monday through Friday. I got a lot of action in. I was up there on the slopes, about 15, 20-degree weather a few of those days, 15, 20-mile-an-hour winds. So it was a lot of fun, man. I love it. I love to do stuff like that. And it was a great recharging of the batteries. Got home. Obviously, we had no SEC football on Saturday. Watched Army-Navy, cleaned up the house a little bit. And now excited that we're back, man, and getting after it. And bowl games getting going this weekend, college football playoff. And also, I want to wish a very merry early Christmas to you and yours, Mike, and the War Report family as well. So exciting time as we close out 2024.
Yeah, look, well, I got the Christmas tree set up behind me, Chris.
I see it. You look very festive, Mike. You look very festive.
I got some Christmas presents for all the SEC fans watching this segment. Let's get into it.
Shameless plug, by the way, Mike. Yours truly. The birthday is coming up on Christmas Day. So shameless plug. Shameless plug.
Hey, listen. Yeah. Tweet the cash out.
Tweet the Venmo, he says.
Look, let's get into these power rankings here. After it was all said and done, post-SEC championship game, Georgia reigned supreme. I told you guys that the Georgia Bulldogs were number one. They proved it by taking down the Texas Longhorns for a second time this season. It was their second straight overtime game, and there was absolutely no chance, Chris, that after 8 overtimes versus Georgia Tech, that they were going to lose this game in overtime to a Longhorn. Come on, man.
Yeah, I got to give you a lot of credit, Mike, because you called it. I mean, you called it all season with Georgia, man. You felt like, they bounced around everywhere from start of the season at number one. They were in that position for most of the time at the first half of the season. They dropped down to around 3 or 4 there at one point. I think maybe even down to number 5. And you stayed firm on that, Mike, that Georgia was the creme de la creme in the SEC, and you called it, man. Here we are. It's like time is a flat circle, right? The more things change, the more they stay the same. And Georgia back number one in the SEC power rankings again. So, and SEC champions, of course.
That's because they're the fucking best, Chris Phillips. Now, moving on here, you had South Carolina at 3, Tennessee at 4, Alabama at 5, Florida at 6, Ole Miss at 7, LSU at 8, Texas A&M at 9, Missouri at 10, Vanderbilt at 12. Auburn comes in, Vanderbilt at 11, Auburn at 12. Auburn comes in at 12, despite losing the Iron Bowl to Alabama, ahead of Arkansas, Oklahoma, who they lost to, Mississippi State and Kentucky. So I'm gonna give the mic back to you here for a second, Chris. We understand that Georgia is number one, and I think safe to say Texas only lost 2 games all year, and they were both to Georgia. So I'm okay with them at number 2. But South Carolina ahead of Tennessee, a playoff team.
Well, I mean, listen, I understand one's in the playoff and one is not. And I've had a lot of Tennessee fans give me a lot of hell for it. And I mean, I think very highly of Tennessee. I just think, going into the end of the season, South Carolina winners of 6 straight. I think right now on a neutral field, I could make a very, very legitimate case that South Carolina would win that football game. With the way they were playing down the stretch, again, one of the hottest teams in the country, one of the hottest quarterbacks in the country, Lenora Sellers, their defense. I mean, I think a front 7 that would match Tennessee blow for blow. I mean, that's why I had South Carolina in that 3 spot. And again, I think very highly of Tennessee. Heck, Mike, I'll spoil it for you. I got Tennessee beating Ohio State in the shoe. Like I think very highly of the Vols, but
okay.
I mean, listen, it's with the way that the college football playoff is set up, and we're going to have some years where I think maybe the third or fourth best team is because of maybe an out of conference loss or the way just the way if they get hot end of year or when they get hot or whatever the results may be, that it may not always work out where it's these three teams that are in the playoff are 1, 2, 3, and that's kind of just how it worked out this year. I just felt like, again, the way that South Carolina had heated up down the stretch, they were my number 3 the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season. And obviously after beating Clemson, I wasn't going to move them out of that slot.
Yeah, look, Southie at 3, again, Tennessee at 4, even though they made the playoff. Alabama missed the playoff, much to the chagrin of many Roll Tideans. They didn't make it, and they didn't deserve to make it, Chris.
They're
and
taking more L's right now in the portal, Mike.
Oh, my God.
I'm sure everybody's seen that.
Lots of L's up in Tuscaloosa right now. Yeah, they argued and they argued and they argued, but ultimately SMU got that final spot. I think they deserved it. You didn't make your conference championship game. They did. And although they lost to Clemson, I felt like they still deserved that spot. Florida, look, Billy Napier turned in a season for the ages considering the schedule. Them at number 6 is pretty surprising in front of Ole Miss, but they beat Ole Miss, did they not?
They did.
Yeah,
Florida beat Ole Miss. Yes, Florida did beat. That was one of their big wins down the stretch, beating Ole Miss and LSU. So, yeah, Florida plays this Friday, obviously, against Tulane in the Gasparilla Bowl. Chance to notch an 8th win for Billy Napier and company going into 2025.
Unreal. I mean, look, Florida, great job by Billy Napier, but there's a version of this power rankings that we have to talk about before we move on to talking about the Auburn Tigers, and that's the fraud version, Chris. That's the fraud, and there's a lot of them, and I want to talk about each one of these frauds specifically, starting with Texas. You had 2 shots at Georgia, and you couldn't get it done. So you're a fraud.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Mike, and that's totally fine. Who would you say is the second best team in the SEC if it is not Texas?
It's Texas.
Or it's still Texas. Frauds. They're just a fraud. Okay.
There's
all
frauds,
right.
Yeah.
I'm just, I think it's a question for anybody out there who thinks Texas is this joke of a team. Like, who would you put at 2? That's my question.
Yeah.
It's the tough part.
Runner-up belongs at 2, but it doesn't mean that you're not a fraud for losing to a depleted Georgia team twice. The worst version of Carson Beck.
Allowing a Carson Beck with one arm to come in and hand the football.
Come on, man.
How is Texas not stacking the box on that play?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, you had your chance in overtime. You couldn't do it. You're a fraud. Congratulations. Let's go back to the fraud list here. Alabama, congratulations. You inherited Kalen DeBoer, the most talented roster any coach has ever inherited, and you didn't make the playoff. You, sir, are a fraud, and your team are frauds. Yes, I don't care that Auburn lost the Iron Bowl. You earned the fraud label. Ole Miss, you might be the fraudiest of the fraudy on this list. You lost to Kentucky. You should have started this season 6-0. They had the easiest path to the playoff of all the teams here, and they couldn't do it. And if he can't do it this year, Chris, he's never going to do it. Congratulations, Ole Miss Rebels.
That might be, Mike. That might be in the history of Ole Miss football the worst loss of all time. When you think about it.
Awful.
The most excruciating loss when you think about what it took away from them.
Yeah. All the hope in their hearts, dead. You will never make a playoff. I don't care if there's 18 teams, 24 teams. Lane Kiffin will invent a new low and then find it. Going back to my fraud list here. LSU, I hate to say this, but come on, man.
Yeah.
Frauds. They lost too many games this year to not be frauds. Texas A&M, you had a chance to knock off your rival, make the SEC championship game in Texas's first year, and you couldn't get it done. You lost to Auburn, and you couldn't get it done versus Texas. You are frauds.
Yeah, listen, I was there in person at that game, and I mean, really, here's the thing, Mike. The loss to Texas was painful, but the loss to Auburn, man, if you just beat Auburn, you just had to beat Auburn.
You're fraud. I mean, this
little
is a tough Auburn team, but you got to win that
now.
one.
little old Auburn at Jordan-Hare at night. How
Yeah.
difficult it can be to win in that environment.
Yeah, they had to win that one. They couldn't get it done. Fraud. Going back to my fraud list here, Missouri deserves probably the second fraudiest team on this list is Missouri.
Their fans, Mike, they think I hate them because I have them in that. Here's
You
the thing:
you should.
they
because
think I
they're
hate them because I have them in that 10 spot, and they're like, we lost to South Carolina in the final 10 seconds of the game, and they feel like they should have won that game. How is South Carolina 3 and Mizzou 10? Who did Mizzou beat this season?
Nobody, because they're frauds.
Not a team. Not
They
a
lost to Auburn.
I mean, all Mizzou had to do this season to make the playoff was win a game that they quote unquote shouldn't have, which I guess one of A&M, Bama, and South Carolina. They couldn't even win one of them. So
Can't win one. Frauds. Absolute.
frauds. Yeah, I agree.
Frauds. Going down the list here, Oklahoma. Come on, man. Come on.
Terrible.
Yeah, I know they got hurt, but they got a lot of injuries. They had a lot of injuries, Chris.
Have you seen the laundry list of portal guys?
Yeah.
They got like 30 dudes in the portal.
When you get hurt at that rate, it's because you're soft and you need to lift some weights, so you're frauds. And that's it. This is football. Lift some weights, eat some Wheaties, get your protein, 1 gram per pound of body weight. Come on, man. Everybody knows the rules. Kentucky, you started this season as a top 25 team and you finished pretty poorly. Frauds. They're frauds. And that's my frauds list. I just had to make sure we gave out those superlatives.
I think that's solid, yeah.
Look, man, all that fraud talk made me get a little hungry. So I'm going to go visit our friends at Los Amigos Restaurant. Visit them at 1220 Fox Run Ave, Suite 200 in Opelika, Alabama. Los Amigos serving up some really good stuff, man. We did a live, Chris, from Los Amigos last Wednesday. My guy Thrift Behringer from Sports Vision Radios and Georgia Alabama Sports Live joined me live. We had queso, we ate burritos, we had quesadillas. It was an amazing time. Great food, clean service, great service with a smile. Los Amigos Restaurant. Again, visit them at 1220 Fox Run Ave, Suite 200 in Opelika, Alabama. You can check us next Wednesday there. Thrift is going to be he's going to be smashing another quesadilla. And if all of that eating Mexican food makes you Bonde, joymode.com. Visit tryjoymode.com. Bonde is French for horny. Tryjoymode.com. Use code reporter, get 20% off plus a free shipping. Imagine a supplement like your favorite greens pack that you can put in 6 to 8 ounces of water, and then 45 minutes later, bam, rainbows, sunshine, sprinkles, all the stuff. However you see it in your eyes when it's happening, Joy Mode has you covered. Again, tryjoymode.com. Use code reporter to get 20% off a plus free shipping. Auburn finished the season with a loss to Alabama. They had an outside shot to make a bowl game, maybe at 5-7 after an Independence Bowl back out. I think they ended up taking Louisiana Tech. Logistically, Chris, it was in Louisiana, it's in Shreveport, and travel was easy. So no bowl game for Auburn this year.
Hugh Freeze is distracted with recruiting and other things, so he probably didn't want to do it anyways.
But Auburn's been busy. Auburn's been busy in the portal. Jackson Arnold is a Auburn Tiger, and I want to close this segment asking you your thoughts here. A couple hours ago, they signed Ashton Daniels from Stanford as a backup potentially, but Auburn turns over their entire quarterback room. Walker White, former top 50 overall player, gone. Hank Brown, gone. Holden Gerner, gone. Peyton Thorne, graduated. This will be a brand new, it will be presumably Jackson Arnold, Ashton Daniels, and one of the highest rated recruits in Auburn history, and Deuce Knight. He was starring at the Mississippi-Alabama All-Star game this weekend. Your thoughts on Jackson Arnold and what Hugh Freeze will be able to do with the young Jackson Arnold, former 5-star quarterback.
Yeah, Mike, I like the pickup. I think Jackson Arnold's got a lot of upside. I thought one of the problems Oklahoma had this year, outside of the injuries and everything else that happened to him, I thought they bailed on him too quickly. I really did. He had his struggles early on, but it was a new OC, and you saw Oklahoma go into that first conference game against a Tennessee defense that I think we all knew how good that defense was, and he had some struggles. I know he turned the football over, but I kind of felt like they bailed on him. I was surprised to see Jackson Arnold come back in and burn a year of eligibility after that happened. I just thought for sure he'd be portal bound and maybe enter the portal by midseason, but I think it speaks to the kid's character. He wanted to finish it out the right way, play out the season. Again, I love the kid's skill set. I mean, I think that, dual threat kind of guy. I think that, gunslinger. So he needs to be developed, and that'll be the big question, I think. Can Hugh Freeze develop him, get the most out of him? I have more questions,
my
Mike,
question.
about do I trust Hugh Freeze handling him, not his talent. I don't doubt Jackson Arnold's talent in the slightest. I really don't.
Yeah.
It'll be more so about the handling of him and the development from Hugh Freeze and his staff. That's more so. But I tell you this, Jackson Arnold with that group of receivers, Mike, there will be no excuse.
If
it doesn't work, I'm not saying Jackson Arnold's a perfect player, but if the offense doesn't work, like Peyton Thorne's been the scapegoat the last 2 years, and I'm not saying he didn't deserve the
still threw for 2,700 yards. Still threw for 2,700 yards.
He did, but he served as the scapegoat the last 2 years. Again, not saying he didn't deserve the criticism. If it doesn't work next year with Jackson Arnold, I think you got to look at one person, and I think that's why there's so much. Yeah, that's why there's so much pressure on Hugh Freeze going to next year, because at some point people start to look at it and say, okay, you're the problem.
Yeah,
you're the problem.
There's a story developing in Auburn's quarterback room. Again, all these guys left, and there was a lot of questions about Walker White, and people were on social media saying, "Oh, he's running from competition." Walker White is not running from competition. Again, there's a developing story here. It's not my story to tell, but I will tell you that I will be looking squarely at the head coach if Jackson Arnold is not a 3,000-yard passer with these receivers in this system next year, and closer to 400 yards passing. Look, Oklahoma ran Jackson Arnold 150 times last year. 150 rush attempts. The second leading rusher in the conference was Jarquez Hunter, and he had 187 rush attempts this season. I mean, that's a lot of running the quarterback, and I don't see Hugh Freeze running Jackson Arnold that much, so he's going to have to do a little bit more with his arm on the planes. But yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned quarterback development, because we were promised quarterback development in Hugh Freeze's opening presser, Chris, and I don't see that that's happened in the 2 years that he's been on the plains.
No, it hasn't. I mean, I think we saw some of that coaching malpractice over this past season. I mean, just at times the usage of personnel or lack thereof. And, Peyton Thorne, I thought, again, limitations with Peyton Thorne, I totally understand it. But I think we can all agree, with the talent that Auburn had on the offensive side, even if you were somewhat – and, I mean, we say if you were somewhat handicapped at the quarterback position, what about the other guys? Like, I mean, nobody else was ready to go. There was never anybody else that was ready to step up, whether it was Hank Brown or any of the others behind Peyton Thorne. So, yeah, again, with the talent you have now, Jackson Arnold's a guy that if you've got a coach that is good at developing and getting the most out of guys, like Jackson Arnold just simply needs to be molded. That's it. You don't need to change a bunch of things. He just needs to be molded and put in positions to be successful. Like I think we'll be able to very easily identify if that's happening or not.
Yeah, I agree. Play calling was an issue. And again, another story I think that needs to be sorted out is who's calling plays. He said that it's been, I call it a little, Ken Austin calls a little, Derek Nix calls a little, but all reports point to it's him. He's the one calling plays, and it's not working. So in critical moments, Auburn has had key failures. If you're expecting Jackson Arnold to save this offense, I don't think he's the guy that's going to save you in year 3. So they're going to have to get better from a coaching standpoint if Auburn is going to, get to 500 and beyond. And I think that you need to be beyond if you want to see a year 4 if you're Hugh Freeze. But look, man, we want to see another week of Chris Phillips here, man. I appreciate your perspective as always. Before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, Mike, excited to jump back on with you. We're back in the saddle. And by the way, I was going to say earlier, you made me hungry talking about Los Amigos. Whenever we come in town early this spring for a basketball game, we better get by there and have us some queso and burritos.
For sure, 100%.
No, man, again, excited to be back in the saddle with you at SEC Unfiltered, where you can check us out, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you get your content, YouTube, podcasts, and, of course, our website, secunfiltered.com.
Guys, that's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report, my guy, Chris Phillips. If you want more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. We are the War Report on every social media platform, TW Report on TikTok. Check us out tomorrow right here on the Auburn Express.